Well, hello there, humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and if you're lucky enough to be doing it too. Bushka and Blitz, and this is the M60, the salt maker. This is the Tier 10 American medium tank, loosely akin to the M48A1. Well, it's not loosely, it's very, very close, and it shares a lot of the stats and similarities of the M48A1, but with a few minor tweaks, adjustments, bells and whistles. Now, why am I making a video about this? It's going to be available in the Winterfare Super Game, such as it is. Now, I'm not going to break that all down for you here. Wargaming have articles with the rules and the ideas behind all that stuff, and they're either out now or they will be out very, very soon. What I'm going to break down for you is the tank itself. Why it's, a much sought after tank, even now. Why it remains a tank that so many people want to drive and want to play, and why, it does well, and how you should drive it if you want to do well in it. And I know that not a huge amount of people are going to have this tank, and not a huge amount of people are going to get this tank, but some will, and everyone, it's just a real conversation starter. Like, everyone wants to watch videos about this thing, and it's an important part of the game, and it's a very important part of the game's history. It represents some of the things that Wargaming really did wrong. And they won't reveal the algorithm that they used to pick who got this tank in the first place. Despite many people asking them, me included, over a long period of time. This tank has two things going for it that, well, it's got more than two things, but there's two things that make it very, very exciting to drive in Tier 10. The current meta at Tier 10 has an awful lot of big alpha guns. You can see we've got a 183 and a Jaeger on our team, and an E100. They've got a Jagdpanzer E100 on their team that's just gone down. And quite often you have 3 or 4 big alpha guns in each game, which is a lot of big alpha guns to deal with. This tank has gun depression and a reasonably strong turret. And I'm going to show you the armor profile of the tank in just a second, which will illustrate exactly why that's important. And the gun depression it has is 10 degrees, which is 1 degree more than its close cousin, the M48A1. And the reason those two things are so important in the current game is it allows it to work ridge lines and get shots off in situations that not everyone would be able to get shots off in. And that allows it to actually do damage without getting absolutely wrecked. If you're in, for instance, a T62A, and you wanted to poke over a ridgeline to get a shot off, you'd have to expose all of your tank to incoming fire. And if there is a 183 on the other side of the map who's just sitting there in spawn completely unspotted, and you poke over the top of a ridgeline, well, you can get hit for 1300 average damage from a Hesh round, which is all but 500 of your bloody hit points. It's just a lot of damage and a lot of unnecessary angst. So, be that as it may, being able to sneak about the map and poke and peek without exposing the weakest part of your armor profile is really, really important. And that's something the M60 can do better than just about any other Tier 10 medium tank. There are other Tier 10 medium tanks that have 10 degrees of gun depression. Most notably, tanks like the Leopard. You're looking at... No, actually, the Leopard and the M48A1 are both 9 degrees of gun depression. The FV4202, the STB1, they both run at 10 degrees of gun depression, which is pretty important. Then you get tanks like the 62A and the Object 140, which are running at like 5 and 6 degrees of gun depression. And you start to realise that it's a pretty valuable asset to have. And that extra 1 degree of gun depression, that's 10% more gun depression, it's really huge. Now that's me driving both these tanks, obviously. You can see with 263 millimeters of pen, I'm running calibrated shells at the present on this M60 that I've got here. There's an awful lot of red. You're not going to go through the mantlet regardless, but you can get through the cheeks either side of the mantlet. It's a lot like the M103's turret when you look at it from this perspective. You've got those weak points either side of the cheeks. But remember, if you're in a Tier 10 game, you're not sitting there like that, just completely visible. You're peeking. You're doing it from camo, so no one sees you, and then you peek up like this to get your shot off, and you have 10 degrees of gun depression, so you don't have to go all the way over hill. You can just expose this very, very nicely armored upper profile and get your shot off. Now, if you had to go all the way over the top of the hill because you didn't have gun depression, you can see immediately there is not enough armor there to save you from anyone's bad intentions. And if that's a 183 or a Jaegeru or a T124 or a grill or an Object 268, you know you're going to eat a full round of injustice and angst. And well, you should, because, you know, that's bad. The other thing that it has going for it, which is really, really important, is the aim time. You can get your aim time down to 2.7 seconds running double provisions, gun laying drive, and vertical stabilizer. And well, you should, because the aim time allows you to fire on the move, to peek over the top of a ridge, and that's really, really important. If you can peek over the top of a ridge, and you only want to expose that armor profile for a very, very short period of time, if you have a very good aim time, it means you're going to get the best possible shot as quickly as possible, and that allows you to, again, minimize and mitigate the risk that is present when you try and peak in a tier 10 game. I mean, even the lowest of tanks at tier 10 that are TDs or heavies are going to generally do at least 400 damage to you. And that's 400 damage on this tank. It's like, you know, 20% of your hit point pool. 1,000 damage, which you'll take every day of the week from 183, is over 50% of your hit point pool. And that's a tough thing to ask. And you can see that 420 alpha bounce that I got from the rear was from the IS-8 over there. Lovely stuff. So it can brawl. It's got enough DPM for that. 3,238 DPM off the top of my head, which is if you're running the rammer. If you're running calibrated shells, you drop a bit of that. And I'm going to take a second here to talk about the real question that I come up with all the time. You can see I try and save this guy from purple from taking any more damage. The real question I come up against all the time when I talk about calibrated shells, and I've had really good debates with very, very good players from pretty much all different kinds of clans across all different kinds of servers who tell me I'm an idiot for running calibrated shells, and others tell me they run calibrated shells on all their tier 10 mediums. And there's one notable exception that most people don't run calibrated shells on, and that is the E50M, because the DPM is just so crap you can't afford to sacrifice any of it. I mean, and here's the breakdown with calibrated shells. By the way, 10 degrees of gun depression, you're able to get shots off all over the place. It goes, if you've got 10 degrees of gun depression, you have opportunities to get shots off all over. Now, this is a great example of calibrated shells versus rammer. Now, in this instance, you're going to see I'm actually firing on the reload. Now, if I was running the rammer, I'd be running a lot quicker reload. Now, when the adrenaline finishes, you'll see my reload is about 7 seconds between shells. If I was running the rammer, it'd be like 6.5 seconds between shells. When you are in this situation where you are target rich and there are so many opportunities to put shots in, running the rammer is outstanding. You really want to be running the rammer. You want to maximize the opportunities for putting shots in. When you're in the situation where you are not doing that, the rammer is surplus value. What do I mean by that? If you are firing and pressing the button, extra pen helps every time. Sometimes it'll go through regardless because the armor profile is so weak, and that's surplus value again. But it doesn't happen very often. You've got to remember that there's a range of variation. Just because something shows as pennable in game doesn't mean that it will 100% go through, because just like shell penetration values, shell damage values that roll high and roll low, penetration rolls high and low as well. So you might roll a lower penetration, and that means you just don't manage to pen. But with calibrated shells, that floor is higher, so you're far more likely to pen. And that means that every time you fire, you're getting value from the shell. If you are not firing on the reload, now in that situation, a rammer would have been better. It just would have been better. In this situation, you can see I fire and then I am completely reloaded. So I'm firing from a complete reload there, and then I don't fire again for a bit, and penetrating shells is helping far more than the rammer is. So no one's right and no one's wrong. Both schools of thought are exactly correct. I'd much rather be running calibrated shells versus this IS-7, and I will quite often just switch to heat now on an IS-7 because I am so sick of bouncing shots off IS-7s. And when you switch to heat, you have 330 millimeters of pen, and sure, you've lowered your DPM a little bit, but you are absolutely going to pen, and that's far more important. And this tank has good pen values. 260 if you're running calibrated shells, 263 millimeters of pen on your APCR, 330 millimeters of pen on your heat rounds, and that will allow you to get through the cheeks of a mouse or the lower plate or the upper plate of an IS-7 if you're in a particularly tight spot, and that's really, really important. It also, because of the 10 degrees of gun depression, even when you're in close proximity fights, it's still able to utilize that 10 degrees of gun depression to get shots off. And you're going to see, I don't take damage from the grill, but I am peeking and just checking things out when I move around here. And I'm going to take one from the mouse. I'm just trying to get a shot in here. Mouses, man, they are tough pens. And I wanted him to crack one into me so that Nick can actually have a crack there, and then I can have 2 shots at him, and we get the second one to pen, and Nick had a shot too, but obviously, tough thing. Watch the gun depression here. 10 degrees of gun depression. I'm able to peek up on that grill, get a shot, and back down again. I don't have to expose myself. Gun depression just allows you to manufacture so many more shots than you'd believe. And that means that, in essence, you are maximizing your time on target while in game. And it's one of the reasons why, for the most part, low DPM tier 10 mediums are gun depression tanks. Like the STB, the FE4202, the M48A1, the M60 are all lower DPM mediums than your Russian meds that don't have gun depression. The big difference obviously being that tanks like the Leopard 1, they have nearly as good DPM as the Russian mediums, but then again, they also have absolutely no armor. So, there's swings and roundabouts. And it's part of the game that's so nuanced. Now, everyone wants one of these because, look, let's face facts. It costs you 6.1 million credits to buy a tier 10 tank. And that doesn't include all the time spent grinding up or the free XP used to grind up a line before it to get there. And a lot of the time, you're just grinding to a tier 10 tank because you really, really want that tank, and you don't really care about any of the other tanks in the line. Like an Object 263 is one of the more well-known. Lots of people don't like the 100M1 and the 101, and they just want the 263. So they spend all this time grinding and playing these tanks, and sure, they might enjoy it, but they sell the tanks thereafter to finance the next purchase, and then eventually they get to the 263. And they want that 263 because they want a good tank at tier 10 to compete, and they want a tank that can, give them the best possible chance of winning and having a good time. And that's how the world works. And the M60 gives you that without all the grinding, and without all the time and money spent, which is pretty freaking cool. And that's why everyone wants it. So I'm going to show you one more game after this. It's funny. You might remember Nick, the guy I'm playing with from Premo. We had a game in the Chieftain where I had a really good game on this map. Well, not a really good game, but a solid game on this map. And from the same spawn. And then the first game I actually platooned with him, we ran M60, and from the same spawn we had another really close game where I managed to have a good one. And again, side hugging that turret, you can see, look at it, it's really, really strong. And side hugging, not letting people get the gun down and do nasty things to you is really, really important. Agility wise and mobility wise, it's excellent. Your traverse numbers, you have 65.96 degrees of traverse running one single Russian, and the improved control, which I run. And top speed wise, 48 kilometers an hour forwards, 20 kilometers an hour backwards. It's actually got outstanding terrain resistance stats, which mean its effective horsepower per ton is even better than the M48A1s. It's better than the STB1 on all bar hard terrain. It's better than the M48A1. It's not as good as the FE4202 or the T62A or the Leopard 1, obviously. And how am I getting those stats? Well, if you go to Blitz Stars and go to compare tanks, you can see what they do is they look at the overall horsepower per ton, which at the moment for this tank is 17.98, which is actually quite low. But it's better than the T62As, which is 17.42. But then you factor in the terrain resistance stats, the hidden stats, which is the coefficient you get on hard, medium, and soft terrain. Mad Red Rat has a video up on that if you want to go and check out what I mean. He's got all the terrain maps for the various maps in Blitz. They're probably a few patches out of date, but it gives you an idea on what I'm talking about. Now, the numbers on the M60 are 0.7, 0.8, and 1.2. The numbers on the M48A1 are 0.8, 0.9, and 1.2. And it's why the M60 actually has about 8% better terrain mobility on medium and hard terrain than the M48A1, and just about exactly the same on soft terrain, because the terrain resistance stats are just better. Now you can see here I've used the mobility of the tank. We were pretty sure they were going to push us hard down low. So Concept and I have pumped around the corner here, and we're trying to get shots into, I mean, you can see we have a 183. They've got two 183s. We've got a Jaegeru. I mean, 4 out of 14 tanks are just monster DPM tanks, and monster alpha tanks in this game. This is the meta, and it's why you've got to be really, really careful. And it's one of the reasons why we didn't want to go low and get sandwiched by mediums and then stuck with 183s into us. And you can see I'm able to get shots down there. I'm just showing that turret. It's actually quite strong. We get a couple of bounces here. I try to drive wheel that T57 heavy, but, you know, didn't go in. That's all there is to it. That's RNG's, just take the wheel. And Concept is now pushing around towards the cap circle, and I'm just holding here, trying to get shots in and spotting. Now, the other thing this thing has is outstanding view range. 309.8 meters of view range running one single Russian, not wanting it. And there's the 183. He made a little bit of an error in judgment there, pushing forward, and we really punish him quite hard for it. I'm willing to take a shot just to get another one in on that 183. Bounce one, bounce two, and that's that turret working again at range, hull down, blow this shot, just miss it. Anyway, and here comes problems up top. Now we're 3 on 5, which is not good. And our Jaegeru is probably in the worst spot. Watch this aim time. I pull back to let Concept have a shot. Now we're 2 on 5, which is bad. It's not good. Concept has a shot. I pull forward. Watch how long I'm exposed for. That's aim time. That is just all the aim time of this gun. It's a lovely thing. And then we're going to push really, really hard. The 183 gets taken out by Concept. I'm looking for shots, just waiting for him to move back up. And then we're going to push this this bloke here really, really tough. I blowed that shot, really, really bad shot on my part, which cost Concept a shot he shouldn't have had to take here. But we make up for it. Clear one. And now we're 2 on 3. Concept clears the 62A. I back it off. I think the 54 must be coming soon. There he is. We blow him. And now I have no kits left, but I know I can push up here, only he manages to track me. I'm thinking he's got to be on a reload. I can take at least one. If I can put one into him, Concept can put one into him, we should be able to clear him. So I come around here. There's my one. Straight through the drive wheel. Sit still and like it. And there's your absolutely unlikely carry. Concept was in voice chat with me and he goes, "This is a loss." And I said, "Yeah, this is a loss." And then we did that, and it was it ended up being quite a big platoon Rossini with about 8,000 damage there. A couple of good players on the other team as well, you can see there. Certainly some solid efforts all round. A lot of fun that game, and a lot of good in terms of showing off the M60 and what's good about it. I hope you like that, guys. Stick around, there's a lot more coming on channel. I hope you enjoy the content. Christmas is going to be some changes because obviously I won't be around all the time, but I'll put that up on channel and we'll find out all about that later. Until next time, look after yourselves and stay safe on the battlefield.